Hi, everyone. Good morning to some, good afternoon to some, and good evening to some. Welcome to the Synapse panel session today. Before we get started with the panel, let me introduce Synapse to you. So, our vision, a community driven platform that connects and fosters talented minds to create an empire that expands beyond its pages and transforms content more powerful by ensuring it is openly available by redefining creativity. A little bit about us. It's a free platform that connects and adds voices. Those are usually lost somewhere. Since March 2020, it's one of the best and globally acclaimed platform with 30 plus talented on board, accountability partner for content curation, redefining creativity with unique ways of knowledge sharing, hosted two global events, one meetup, parallel learning series, teller of tales, blogcast, and study notes. Partnered with other communities for 5 global testing conferences as well. Something that we are currently doing is the Super Reads and the Sparks. So it's a global write-a-thon and webinar anthology. So make sure you send your blogs with amazing stuff around what you're learning, and you could be a winner. So make sure we get some blogs coming through. So some critical dates, the Super Reads 2021 timelines are 30th of November being the closing call for writers. So you've got about a day to hand in any blogs that you think would be really useful to share with the community out there. 12th of December 2021 will be revealing of Super Reads launch with 12 shortlisted articles. 1st of January 2022, winner announcement and grand prize ceremony. Today, our panel discussion is based on leadership role in testing, a scarcity. So that's a question to our panelists. And I will stop sharing now and I'll let the panelists introduce themselves. So let's start with Christina. Hi, Christina, how are you feeling today? And tell us a
Hi,
little bit more about yourself.
thanks, Lavina. So I'm actually excited to be at the Super Eats 2021 to be part of this panel. I just came out of kind of a long weekend. It was Thanksgiving here. Not so great about getting back to work today, though. But still, I'm glad to be here and to be part of this great panel so that we can discuss so much about testing leadership. I'm working in Northwestern Mutual, which is in the financial sector here in New York City. And I'm been in the testing leadership for quite a while, not a long time though. And it's interesting that I can be here and talk to you all. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you very much, Christina. Over to you, Simon. A little bit of introduction from you.
Yeah, thank you, Lavina. Hi, everyone. I'm Simon. It's great to be here. It's nice to be part of a panel to talk about something that I'm very passionate about in the test leadership space. It's a bit grim here today. I think we're at 0 degrees, bit of snow, bit of ice outside. Not the most pleasant weather, but yeah, no, glad to be on this. I'm a senior test manager at EasyJet, managing the digital data science and end-to-end test teams across our main platforms. I'm also a co-host of the Testing Peers podcast, where we talk about test leadership. So again, this is something that I regularly talk about and I'm very passionate about. So I'm sure we're going to get into some good discussions.
Thank you very much, Simon. And over to you, Joanna.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks, Lavina. Very excited to be here. Similar to Christina, coming off of Thanksgiving here in the U.S. It is not 0 degrees, but I feel like it's close to it. Anything under 70 degrees is freezing to me. So very excited to talk about test leadership, something I think is an exciting topic for a lot of people, something that I'm really excited to talk about. I think we'll get into some great discussions today. I am a senior director of QA at twinspires.com. So we facilitate online wagering for horse racing in sports and casino. So feel free to check us out. Some of you guys may have heard of the Kentucky Derby. It's a pretty large racing event here in the U.S. So we're directly affiliated with that as well. So excited to get deeper into discussions today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first one's simple question into this topic. So let's start with you, Simon. So what exactly do you mean by leadership in testing?
So I think there's two elements to that, really. It's one element is the trying to show best practices and encourage best practices and be a thought leader from a testing perspective. But then it's also being someone to help shape and build teams around a testing practice, whether it be a team of testers or whether it be encouraging, coaching, mentoring testing across an engineering organization. So for me, it's that two elements. It's being those thought leaders, and it's then sharing and improving the teams around you.
What about yourself, Joanna? What do you think around that?
Yeah, Simon, that's excellent. I think to add on to that, there's different levels of test leadership, right? There's the lead role where you're doing day in, day out kind of test executions, ensuring best practices are being adhered to, that sort of thing. And then there's also, management or director type leadership where you're really thinking about the vision and the strategic goals of the organization, driving that quality as a culture, ensuring that someone's staying on top of those latest trends, someone to champion for quality, especially as we move into more agile testing and testers are kind of dispersed across testing teams and you don't have that direct day-to-day interaction all the time. Ensuring that those practices are spelled out for teams and everyone's kind of adhering to those is important as well. And then also having the back of testers is really important to ensure that quality is something that everyone on the team and everyone in the organization is thinking about every day.
100% agree with that. And to you, Christina, what do you think about this question?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Simon said and Joanna said. To add to that, I feel like it's about bringing in the mindset. It's not only when you say about leadership, especially the managing role, you don't only manage below, but you manage up too, so that they understand that testing is priority and why is it a priority, how do they prioritize it and give more importance to it, and in terms of getting the right resources and the right people in the team with the right skill sets. It doesn't mean that everyone needs to be, especially I believe in something called full stack testing, and especially when it comes to testers who work in my teams, I try to see if they can get hold of such skill sets. It's very not so easy to get hold of, but getting the help of like the upper management and seeing if we can get those skill sets into the team so that it can be made a priority, so that so much is covered in terms of testing at a very early stage, instead of waiting and relying on silo teams and stuff like that towards the end and then having things falling apart. This is something that I also believe that we should as in terms of as we talk about test leadership, that it's not only managing the people or the teams that we are managers of, but it's also managing upwards as well, so that the whole organization's mindset kind of changes to the fact that like what Joanna said, quality is everyone's responsibility, and how can testing do a vital role in that?
Absolutely. Great. Yeah. Simon, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say I completely agree. It's that culture of quality and making sure that it's at all levels of the organization, so that everyone from the CEO downwards has an understanding of the importance of quality, not just testing, but quality as a whole, and building out those quality engineering practices and principles and the way the whole organization sees quality.
Absolutely. So then I saw that obviously all your answers were driving towards one thing, but everyone has a different style of leading. So what do you think, what tips would you give to someone who wants to aim to become a lead? What should they do? What kind of steps would benefit them, and the challenges that you might have faced that could potentially help them not face? So let's start off with you, Simon.
So, I mean, I think for me, for someone that, other than the testing skills and the technical skills, I think it's really important to get that visibility internal to an organization and possibly externally as well. If you're a senior tester, but you want to move into a leadership role or you want a more formal leadership role, then it's having that visibility within your organization. People know who you are. You know, you've talked about testing. People know they can go to you to talk about that kind of topic, and that will help you grow into that kind of position. Sometimes people that have the right skills but don't have that ability to speak out or speak up sometimes get lost because they've not been able to show that.
Yeah, so like nurturing people is vital, 100%. What do you think, Joanna, in this area?
Yeah, I mean, moving into a lead role, being a leader, I should start out, is not something that has to have the title. I think that a lot of times people wait to get the title before they start acting or, giving off the vibes. Coming into leadership roles early on in my career, some of the things that I would think about is, how do I put myself into a leadership role while I'm still a senior tester? And some of the things that I would do is think about it from a collaboration standpoint. So I have multiple people across multiple teams. How do I bring that information together into a visual for people outside of my direct team to be able to see it? Simon spoke about getting yourself out there in front of people. That's one way you can do it. How can you report on things? One of the other important things that I look for in leadership is your ability to go out there and understand trends. And how do you kind of wade through all of the trends that are out there and see which one is applicable or acceptable for your organization? And then it's not just about understanding the trends, but how can you implement those and execute those in your own organization? And you don't have to be a lead to do that. So that's something that is easy to do and something that, kind of going out there and understanding trends. There's tons of good people on this call as well that write, blogs and do YouTubes and conferences and speak on it. So the information's out there, kind of going out there and gathering it and bringing it back to your organization is important.
100% agree with that. Christina, your thoughts?
So for me, yeah, as Joanna spoke, especially about, being a senior test engineer or a senior automation engineer, whatever you may call it, and then, trying to get to that leadership role without even, focusing on that job role change, but basically going in that path. So that was something that I was able to, luckily with the teams that I worked with, especially I would point out when I was at Cisco, was able to kind of get the opportunity to do a lot of mentoring and coaching, and that kind of drove me towards the leadership role that I was in Cisco and now in Northwestern Mutual. So it's just that you have to put yourself out there. If you learn something new, just see if you can have a small session in your team. Maybe start with your team and then maybe go out with the rest of the teams in your organization, and then maybe look out there whether you can write out a blog or something of that sort. So it's about sharing knowledge. So as a leader, it's about you creating new leaders, and I had those leaders who led me, and that's why I am here today. So and it was like, I was, as Joanna spoke, I just kind of related so much to that, because all the leaders that I had in the past, they pushed me or molded me to get to what I am here at the moment. And it's also about you. You want to have that thirst, as you have the passion for testing, and you want to learn what's out there, because you might be doing something that completely works well for your team, but there might be something out there that would benefit yourself, and maybe you would also help your team to do better things. So that's, I think, where you kind of see into moving yourself as a leader, and like driving the rest of your team as well to start believing in those practices. So those are something that kind of bring you to the leadership role. And also, I think, looking out there, reading blogs written by others out there, attending conferences and understanding the different ideas out there also could help you have a vast knowledge and then help your team too. So that's where I suggest that you could take that path and see. Obviously, you don't have to grab everything that everyone says or every blog says. Obviously, you need to kind of take the juice out and get the right stuff and see which ones work for your team. And those decisions, again, those are difficult decisions, and if you can actually drive your team towards that, I'm sure that you will get to that leadership role at the right time.
Absolutely, yeah, and I like the use of your analogy, and it's actually very true that, you know, when you try and bring certain things in your team, other teams are aware of it and they want to bring it on board as well. So it's just you're starting it, but you're spreading your wings everywhere else. So it's just excellent that the way we nurture people and we bring more new leaders, how can we kind of help them be good leaders by examples as well. So that's great. But there are certain times where you might have certain individuals who might want to be leads, but are not motivated enough, or there are obstacles in between you and that person. How do we deal in those kind of situations? How can we actually nurture them and turn their demotivation into motivation for becoming a lead? How would we do that? So let's start off with you, Joanna. How do you think we can change someone's mindset so they feel they're part of the team, they can still be a lead, and they can be motivated, and they can have ambitions of being a great lead?
You know, sometimes I think the environment that people are in creates a lot of motivation or demotivation. And so when I look at someone who I feel like has the capabilities and the drive to be a lead, but maybe they're just demotivated at the time, I tend to look at the environment that we're in and see if there's anything that I can do to help change and facilitate an environment in which they can succeed. If the answer is no, I think still coaching and mentoring someone to perhaps be a lead at a different organization is appropriate. And if the answer is yes, there is organizational shifts or environmental shifts that can be made. I think as a leader, that's on me to help facilitate and remove those blockers for that person. It's really important to understand that leadership is very environment based, and just because you're demotivated or maybe even not a great leader at one environment or one organization doesn't mean that you can't be that great person in the next one. So
absolutely agree. And your thoughts, Christina, on this? How would you kind of motivate someone who's not really motivated for their next jump or their next role that involves taking responsibilities and being an example lead?
Right. So one thing that I would suggest that we should do is bring up the old examples or something that in the past that this particular person has excelled in terms of doing some sort of testing types or something, and bringing that evidence. Maybe, you know, people perform really well, and then sometimes they have, you know, something might happen. Maybe like Joanna said, maybe the environment's not great, the team's not treating that person pretty well, or something of that sort, and that might be kind of like the temporary showstopper for that person. But however, reminding that person of the great work that they did in the past and trying to kind of let them kind of bring back that passion within them. Like, for example, if they were like really good in doing some sort of performance testing, or they were very enthusiastic in bringing that in, and then something happened and they just forgot about it or something of that sort, maybe re-trigger that within them, or like maybe talk about that and ask them, do you want to like have a small session for all the test teams, so that we can kind of get the other teams also to learn? So that's like bringing or reigniting the a skill of like mentoring and coaching within them that was probably sleeping within them, and that might bring back the old passion, and they'll be like, okay, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll forget about my environment, about the you know, the miserable team that I'm in or whatever, and try to look at this as a great interesting thing. And as they start doing that, then they'll really feel like, okay, it looks like this is working for me, and maybe I should do more of this. And then the thirst comes in, and they could start learning more things and trying to train the others too. So that's something that actually personally has worked for a person that I had in one of my teams, and that made a lot of changes in the personality and how a particular person approached the idea of being a good leader. So as kind of being an introvert, this particular person was able to start like talking out and speaking, and because lots of people came up with more questions and they kind of looked up to that person for answers, which kind of made that person feel like, okay, I am able to do this. So that is something that I think as a leader, if we want someone who is not so motivated to take up this and we really believe in that person, this is a push that I think really helps.
Absolutely, yeah. And I remember I was in one of my previous companies where we had an individual who was an introvert and was never kind of pushed to be a lead. And they had to basically give a talk where they said introverts are not people who don't have ideas. They actually have bright ideas as well. So it's just about involving everyone, making that workplace positive enough to kind of help them stay motivated. And what are your thoughts on this, Simon, then?
Yeah, I would agree. It's definitely about finding that spark in somebody. And I've had experience like this in the past where I've had someone that I thought they've got the skill set, but there's something not quite there yet. And the way I did it was I started building that engagement with bringing in some external speakers. From a test perspective, we set up a test community. We started getting people involved across the company, started bringing some engaging external speakers in on topics that I knew this person would be interested in, like exploratory testing or accessibility, and having these people come and talk and saying to them afterwards, they're always open to go and have chats with, go and talk to them, find out a bit more, learn about that, and then you can come back and share some stuff with us, and just nudging them in the right direction, but also doing that thing of, I'll work on this with you. You're not doing this alone. Let's work together, and then I'll help you get to where you want to get to. And just sometimes giving them that encouragement and showing that you're alongside them, knocking down the barriers with them, can really help them feel motivated and feel like they've got that support, because sometimes motivation comes down to feeling like they're having to do it alone. And if you can prove that you've got their back and you're working alongside them, that can really help make the barriers into much less of an issue than they would have been if they were doing it on their own.
Absolutely. So great answers there. But now if we move away from nurturing future leads and focusing on certain things that we might want to bring forward in our team, say, for example, if it's a tool or a change of where we work, and again, we have an obstacle there. As a lead, how would you still kind of push forward for that one thing that you really need in your team? What are the kind of tips or the ways that you would go up to the higher management and suggest to have that particular thing in your team that would make a big difference? So, yeah, any volunteers who would like to start first?
I can go.
Go
Yeah. So, unfortunately, in a business setting, people that run businesses want to hear what the numbers are. At the end of the day, that's their main concern is, what is it going to cost me? And so when I approach people who I report to or peers of mine, I always keep in mind that question is going to come up. And so I usually approach it as a business case and identify what goals are we setting, what value are we getting. If we're choosing a new automation tool, for example, is it going to save us on execution time? Is it going to increase our passing rates? Why does the business care that we're going to get this new tool or that we're going to implement this new process? Even if it's not a tool and it's a process change, sometimes those can add dollars to the bottom line, especially if you're talking about resources that need to implement these new changes or these new tools. So it's really important to provide the business case for it. And typically speaking, I've learned that as long as you have that set out and you understand the goals that you're trying to accomplish and how that's going to drive business value, typically speaking, unless you're trying to spend a crazy amount of money, that's typically how I would go about it.
Yeah.
and I think the budget.
Sorry.
Yeah, go on, Christina.
No,
Please
go
continue.
ahead.
No, I was just saying the good old budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pain. But that's something that's practical that we have to keep in mind, especially if we're going with things like paid tools, or even if there's a process change, if there's going to be a cost involved. Obviously, when you're managing upward, or you're, who you're reporting to wants to know what it is, what the value is, you need to kind of have at least an approximate estimate of that. I would also talk to them and kind of get hold of an idea whether we can probably invest some time in like creating a proof of concept, a POC, maybe getting set of people from my team who also kind of parallelly believe in it, and kind of feel that this tool change or like a process change is going to impact our team and the rest of the teams positively. I would ask them to, I think we get together and try to kind of work out a POC and see if it's going to be a success, and show it to the upper management that, well, we also have the numbers here. We have the proof that it has been a successful process or tool. So what do you think now? So kind of giving them both hand in hand together might kind of make them feel like, maybe I should take this, or it could kind of go in the other way too. But most of the time, if you have like a successful POC and the numbers in the business case that you provide are pretty in an acceptable state, then it could definitely be a success in getting that change in place. So that is something that kind of has been helpful.
Yeah, and
Simon,
I think,
would you like to add? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the one thing for me is it's always about bringing them on the journey. If you have something that you want to really sell and improve the team, is get them to buy into it by feeling part of it. I did this with our director of tech here actually, and got him involved in some of the, we want to bring more exploratory testing into the process rather than it being all about manual testing. So let's have a session where we get the director of tech involved in exploratory testing and show him how it can be and how we can get them involved and show them the benefits. And the same with tooling. Don't just go to them with a business case and say, this is what we need from our perspective, and they won't have any clue what it means. They'll just like Johanna said, they'll look at the numbers. It's really about making them understand what the real benefits are, and sometimes the best way of doing that is to engage them in the process, involve them in discussions around it. If it's a big thing like performance or accessibility, then have them involved in discussion, teach them what accessibility is, teach them what performance benefits we could get by using X tool, etc., etc. And suddenly, if they're on the same page and they're on that journey with you, you've got a lot more chance of getting them to then vouch for it as well as they go up the senior stack. So it's really just, like I say, getting them involved on that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. But now, obviously, we've learned through example leads and through tips that we've been given or things we've seen in our teams, but there can be sometimes where we might have gone through an imposter syndrome, and that's quite normal. But I would like to know, if you had those kind of situations, how did you overcome? What helped you? And was there any kind of community lead out there, or any community influencer for testing that actually made you think, why am I having this imposter syndrome when I have it inside me? I can actually be a great lead. So is there any kind of tips around that you could share, and maybe share certain names so that our listeners today can actually go and add them? Because maybe there's someone there who might be feeling something that you might have gone through, and that could actually help them as well. So whoever wants to start first.
I'll go first. That's okay. I mean, I feel imposter syndrome every day, even now. There's always something new that I'm thinking, well, the buck stops for me at this point. I have to make decisions sometimes that I don't feel whether the right or wrong calls, but I have to go with my gut in a lot of scenarios. And there are a lot of very good people in the industry that I've worked with and spoken to about this. Not to plug the podcast too much, but my Testing Peers co-host would be a good starting point. We did an episode on imposter syndrome for exactly that reason, that it's so common in the industry that every day in a leadership role, I question myself as to whether I'm doing the right thing. I question whether, I've got the right team in place, whether we're doing the right things as far as testing perspective, and just sometimes having those other people in the industry that you can turn and talk to. So yeah, they would be my first reach out point. But there's plenty of others, and Twitter's a great place to ask questions to the testing world and get a lot of great responses back.
Yeah, I've also gone through quite a lot. Just that I would say that I'm pretty new again to the leadership role, and I've had quite a few people who've in the community who've been a great support for me. One of them I would like to mention. He probably would be like, "Why did you tell my name?" But it was Greg Sisports and also Ashley Hansberger. So they've been kind of really people who've been supporting me as well, and a few of my leads that I worked with in the past companies as well. So when I do kind of feel like, maybe I can't, am I even in the right place, or am I even worthy to be here, or whatever that feeling creeps in, I just kind of message them, and then they kind of remind certain things that probably have done, so that it's good to know that that there are people who do value the work that you've done, and when they kind of remind it, because you're suffering imposter syndrome and you forget all that, and then when someone else kind of reminds it to you, you kind of be like, okay, yeah, looks like I'm not in a very bad spot. And I feel like some of these books also kind of help me with these that I think is like something like really helpful. All of these people have gone through kind of a series of they've also gone through that phase where they weren't like they thought that they weren't management material or leadership material, and how they figured out that you're not born as leaders, but you can make or become leaders with like training and learning and all those things and experience and stuff like that. So as that's something that I think helps when you have imposter syndrome. And there's quite a lot of like Simon said, I think there's quite a lot of podcasts that he has conducted, and there's quite others out there as well. And I don't think that you have to kind of rely only on like tech leadership documents or podcasts. There's so much out there that kind of gives you that motivation and then kind of helps you with this. So you could take that up, and then it's difficult. It's going to come on and off, as Simon says. I think we all kind of do suffer through imposter syndrome on and off, but when that's there, just try to remind yourself of what you've overcome and what you've done before. Maybe create a list of things that you've done in the past, and maybe flip the page, get to that page when you're going through that phase, and maybe look at those so that it kind of motivates you.
Yeah, so I've come to the conclusion in life that imposter syndrome is just going to be a part of my day-to-day. As much as I would love to stand here and say, after years of leading people, it magically just goes away one day, that is definitely not it. And I don't think that's a bad thing. The imposter syndrome has driven me to do things that I would never have done before, just because I don't want that to rule my life. So, for example, starting a blog. If I feel that there's topics that I have a lot of information on, great, I'll blog about it. If I feel there are topics where I don't really have a lot to share, I'll go out there and research and talk with other people that understand the topics, and then I write stuff, and it helps me learn and grow. What I found, though, as a leader in stepping into a leadership role, is being vulnerable is probably the most important part of leadership. And if you have a feeling of imposter syndrome, I've always found that it's best to embrace that, and it's best to share that with people around you. If you're having a conversation and you don't know the answer, that's okay. Feel free to say that. And so Christina made a good point that a lot of the times we try to search for books in the tech world to help us grow technically or in leadership skills. But people outside of our tech industry are also great contributors to that. Brene Brown is someone that I really admire. She does a great job at helping understand leadership in terms of vulnerability. So I urge anyone that is looking into leadership to go out there and check her out. She has a lot of podcasts and videos. I feel like there's a lot of great teachers. Two of them are on the line here. We also have Angie Jones, who I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. Ministry of Testing has an awesome Slack community. So a lot of times I go out there and I talk to people, and, trying to get information from one or two people doesn't always work. Sometimes it's nice just to get the conversation started and see what other people think and go from there. So I think that's the answer that I would give there.
Awesome. Great communities mentioned there. Really appreciate that. Right. So I think we've got some time now to answer some questions from our audience today. So feel free to answer these questions. So first one is, what values are most important to you as a leader? So we can start with any of you.
I would say going back, vulnerability is the most important aspect of being a leader. Being able to be empathetic with those around you, being able to understand that everyone is not at the same place in life and value different attributes that people bring to the table. When you're building a team out, you shouldn't have a team that looks like the same person, that acts like the same person, that thinks like the same. Don't be scared to have that diversity on the team. Diversity of people equals diversity of thought. So being able to be vulnerable enough to bring those people in that might add to your skill sets and complement you as a leader is important.
Yeah,
I think you need to,
sorry, go on, Christina.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think you need to be a good listener, like what Joanna said. Being empathetic means you need to listen and kind of hear out the ideas of your team. Sometimes you might have ideas, but your team might have better ideas, and that's something that you need to understand first, so that you can, help them implement it. Because you might want to, obviously, I don't know, I keep on speaking about also kind of managing up, right? So you want the people that you report to also to believe in it. So for that, you need to listen and understand and kind of believe in it, so that you can take it up there, which is going to help you, yourself, your team, and probably, and if it works well for your team, then it's going to help for the other teams too. So that's something that I think one of the good qualities that like the leadership, anyone in the leadership should develop. There's also the quality of like, while you learn and while there is more learning that's going on your side, you also get your team to learn, like give them a specific time, or like, within like in a week, maybe a couple of hours or something of that sort, so that they also get to grow and they're not kind of bottled up into what they do like in a daily basis. It's like the same thing again and again, and that kind of lets them to kind of feel like, oh, I'm doing the same thing again and I'm so bored, like I don't want to do this anymore. So you don't want that to happen. So give them that time so that they can also share their knowledge with the rest of the team, and then that could also bring in new ideas, which probably you might have not had the time to even think. So giving, I think you should always say, like, leadership is not about kind of getting the team to do what you want. It's about doing what the team feels, and then that way I think you should kind of bring in all the ideas in one place and see which works well. So that's something also as a leader you should kind of keep it in your agenda. So yeah, that's some things that I wanted to mention.
So I mean, from my perspective, I mean, everything you two have said is absolutely bang on with values for leadership. I actually spent some time about a year or so ago reflecting and working out what my leadership values were. And I came up with 4 words: protect, meaning protect my team from any outside interference, etc., etc. empower them, so giving them the confidence to be able to move forward without needing me to do everything for them. Evangelize for them, so being the one that shouts on the rooftops when the teams are doing something great, and making sure everyone's aware of what my team are doing. And nurture, building them up and giving them the tools they need to be able to do their job effectively. And I kind of make sure that I'm working with those values in mind with my team every day, and helping them. But equally, empathy, listening, those one are really absolutely key to that as well.
Excellent pointers. Really good and quite motivational as well. So to all the leaders out there, I'm sure you took some notes of these useful tips. The next question is, many companies don't have a definite path for QA or testing, meaning they have to take the role of the project. So what would you think about that, about the project management or product management? What are the various roles that a tester can explore after becoming a QA lead engineer?
I think it's very context specific on the environment you're in, but I would always push that, there's the ability for people in QA and testing to stay technical, involved in the testing, principal testers, test architects. If you want to move into, overseeing the whole testing process, then absolutely test architects would be a role that I would recommend. But equally, those testing skills, having someone do a role other than testing in the business, so project management, product management, BA, etc. If you've got that testing mindset, that's equally spreading the word of quality and testing outside of the testing team. So having that testing mindset, you can take on any role, but it's always going to link back to testers, and testing, improving the value of testing within an organization. But equally, I would say there has to be that push for more senior test roles if needed within an organization.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, Simon. I think to add on to that, sometimes you have to tell people what they don't know that they need. So perhaps you're in a situation where, going back to, I think, the very first topic that we discussed, what is leadership in testing and why is it so important? Being able to go out there and sell why leadership in testing is important, and show them some of the things that they might not know that they need around reporting and best practices, and enabling better trends and processes and that sort of thing, can lead to opportunities that might not be there at the moment, but you could create for yourself.
Yeah,
Totally agree.
I actually agree with that point, because as we were talking about POCs and trying to, if we want to bring in process changes and tools and things like that, and if that's something that you are looking for already and something that you want to bring into your team, then obviously having a leadership role would enable you or give you the tools or the skill sets to kind of make that happen for the entire organization. And that's something, this kind of happened not obviously in the testing field, but in one of the companies that I worked in, there was a particular role. There was no leadership role for that particular field, but one of my colleagues, she just took in some POCs and some examples and had like a whole compilation of presentations, and was able to kind of make her, the person she was reporting to understand why there is a need for the leadership role with like proper evidences. And that kind of really helped for the overall management to kind of change their mind and start actually opening up their mind to thinking of opening a role, and which kind of really helped her to become a senior manager as what she is now. It's not in the testing field, because there was obviously the management or leadership roles for that, but that's something that we can actually use it for as an example for this, as Joanna mentioned as well. I think that's something, as we are trying to bring in change and you are trying to bring in more improvements to the process, and instead of not only kind of isolating it to your team, but bringing it into all the other test teams, means there needs to be kind of a test leadership instead of like kind of having a product leadership or a project leadership, because they have their own problems to kind of sort out there. So that's something that then the management could understand and bring in a new role, which could help you to move into that leadership phase.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much. I think we've got time for one last question. So the last question is, as a leader in quality engineering, what do you think should a person pursue as we reach the leadership role going forward? Would it be to continue in the test leader role or to move over to a more overall engineering leadership role?
I could speak to that. I'm actually in a situation pretty similar to that now, where when I came into the organization, I was the director of QA, and as we moved to more kind of hard and fast agile, an agile environment, dispersing the QA to be on the actual teams and to be engaged in the team just like anyone else was really important. And so there wasn't necessarily a need for a solid line reporting structure where every single QA would report to me. Instead, I took on an engineering director role where I was also managing aspects of development, which was great for a learning opportunity for me to continue to grow in the engineering side of things. And then there's a lot of synergy that happens in automation and engineering, a lot of synergy that should happen at least. And so I think it's probably a personal preference. If you have excitement and joy and you want to learn more about engineering, then there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But even when teams are dispersed and there is no QA organization, if you will, there's still very much a need for someone to create that synergy across the organization, as Christina was mentioning just a minute ago, ensuring that every team is following kind of the same practices, that reporting is still happening from an organizational level, that people still understand the best practices around tools and test architecture and things like that. All of those aspects of leadership are still very much needed, even when there's not a QA formal organization to have.
Yeah, that's right. So, and also to add to that, like bringing in the value of testing even in development is kind of key. So most of the companies, unit tests are kind of more focused on the developers, things to do. And that's something that might not be very well practiced, but that's something that we see that in like the test automation pyramid to be one of the vital things, right? That we need to have kind of covered, and having it covered on like a, 100% test coverage for unit testing and those kind of principles, and having like testing part of your continuous integration and pipeline phase. If you have that feeling to bring in that sort of change, and if moving into the role of an engineering leadership role could make that happen to you in wherever you are in the organization that you are going for that role, I think that will be a great help, not only for having the testing phase in all aspects of like in terms of the delivery or deployment, but also it just helps with the overall quality of the final product that you are delivering. So if that's something that you are passionate about, then definitely an engineering role would be something that you could definitely look out for, because that'll kind of bring in the interaction of both dev and testing hand in hand, and that kind of is, I think, the path that we are moving to. So we are trying to shift left, right? As we see, there's a lot of talk about that. And if we do want to get that driven, and I see that lots of people who have been quality engineering directors or test engineering directors or managers moving into engineering too, and their whole philosophy is about giving more value to testing, not only in the latter part, but also bringing it into like the development phase, and giving more value to adding like unit tests and stuff more in a higher extent than probably how it is. As even though it's like the best practice, developers, not all of them do still kind of write that 100%. So that's something that from the higher level, if someone who is from the test engineering management gets into engineering, could really drive that through. That's what I believe in.
Yeah, I think you're both right with what you said. I have seen a few more testing people take up CTO roles in the last few years as well, because I think actually there's this realization that for quality to be embedded in. Sometimes someone with a quality mindset, testing mindset can help shape that part of the organization. So yeah, absolutely. Heads of engineering, directors of engineering, CTOs, I'm definitely seeing more opportunities for people from a test background to get into those, because absolutely there needs to be that mindset shift. And as Christina said, the shift left, the unit testing, the automation, it isn't just down to the testers. That needs to be something that everyone's bought into, and that whole team approach to quality can really happen if someone from a test background is in senior leadership roles.
Absolutely. So yeah, these were all the kind of questions we could ask in this session. There's 2 more questions, which I would suggest the audience to ask the panelists on social media. You can add them on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Is there anything else that you'd like me to mention as well? Simon, Joanna, or Christina? Where can people reach you out more?
I think LinkedIn
Yeah.
and Twitter are the
Any
best two.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, that was all, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this really, really insightful panel session. Thank you very much to the panelists. And I will just share my screen 1 second. Yeah. Okay, so thanks to our sponsors, Applitools, AxelQ, Lambda Test, Test Sigma, Nuke Test, and Test Project. Thank you everyone for joining us. Super Reads 2021 call for the writers is open still till tomorrow. And please send us your amazing blogs and anything that you can share with the community and can help the community with any insights you have around testing. Make sure to follow Synapse on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Thank you very, very much. Hope you have a lovely day, evening, and afternoon. Thank you.
Bye.